Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Huddersfield Planning Committee. We'll make a start with item 1, membership of the subcommittee. We'll start, Councillor. We usually announce the names, don't we? Yes. Well, what I want to know is, yes, who is going to be here or who isn't here? Are you going to give me that, Councillor Sokol, please?
Yeah, Chair, I can confirm that we've got Councillor
Lawson. No, it's fine.
Councillor Lawson, we've got you. That up there? On the left. Yeah, I've got Councillor Korshik, who I believe is subbing for Councillor Uppel. We've had apologies from Councillor Armour and Councillor Bamford, and I believe Councillor Lawson, you're subbing for Councillor Smith. Correct. That's it. Chair.
Is that all present? All present, correct. Right. Item 2, then, minutes of previous meeting. Somebody prepared to move? Moved. Councillor Uller. Is that seconded? Second, Councillor Sokol. All in favour, please show. Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest and lobbying. Now we'll start with Councillor Bellamy.
None, Chair.
Yeah, I had an email about the page 61 application from an objector. No action taken. I had an email from an objector to one on page 61. No action taken. Just an email. Thank you.
Nothing, thank you.
Nothing, Chair. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Lawler.
Thank you, Chair. We had further emails from application 93564, page 43. And then I received another email in application 90126, the Coachway, page 61. No action taken on both. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I got email from objector 93564. No action taken.
Councillor Homewood.
Yeah, I had the same email in relation to 93564 from an objector. Also had an email on 90126, also from an objector. No action taken.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, same as Councillor Homewood, an email from objector for 90126 and 93564, and no action taken for either of those.
Councillor Sokol.
Yes, Chair, I got email from on item 11, page 43. It's both it's from objector. Yes. And I got an email on item 12, which is Dingley Road, space 61. Yeah. But again, on item 11, I know both the applicant and the objector as well. Thank you.
How well do you know them, or you've not?
I'm a local councillor, yeah, here.
Yes,
yeah.
right.
I'm been 33 years, I know everyone there.
Like the song, is it?
Yes. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. None, but on the item 93564, I know both applicant and the objector, because I'm a ward councillor.
Right, thank you. Yeah, and I've just had 2 emails. Page 43, Thornton Lodge, and page 61, the Lindley application. Admission to the public are here. Deputations and petitions, are there any deputations, petitions? None received. Site visits this morning. And we move then on to the planning applications. And the first one is page 13, which is 22 dwellings at Swallow Lane, Golka.
Thank you, Chair. Just to clarify, it's 21 dwellings, not 22.
So thank you, Chair, and good day, members. Apologies. So yes, in one of the earlier documents there was that error. Yeah. Sorry. Apologies, Chair. So thank you, members. Yes, my name is Nick Hurst, and I'm a senior planning officer and the case officer for this application. The application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 21 dwellings and associated works. The site is largely part of a housing allocation within the local plan, although it does include some unallocated land to the north. So here is the housing allocation, and the red line boundary is here. So approximately this area just to the north is actually unallocated land. The site is within the west of Golka, and of note, Swallow Lane runs along the north, but a terrace road does separate most of the site from the road. To the west is Heathwood Drive, and to the east is Century View, which is in effect phase 1 of this development. Approximately half of the housing allocation has been developed previously, with this application being the phase 2. There are neighbouring properties on to 3 sides of the site with open land to the south. Part of the site has historically been used as garden space, with the other parts of the site hosting a prefabricated structure and domestic scale outbuildings. These images show the typical state of the site from 2 points. At the time of the site visit, and as seen on site today, part of the site was used as a compound for the development of phase 1, as can be seen just off image here. There are numerous trees within and around the site, although none benefit from tree preservation orders or are of significant public amenity value. Nonetheless, officers have worked with the applicant to retain as many trees as feasible. This image shows phase 1. It is included as an indication of the proposal's appearance, which would have a very similar character to that built in phase 1. Similar, and some of the same house types are proposed and materials would be the same. This image shows a proposed layout. Officers have worked with the developer to achieve an appropriate housing mixture with an increased number of free beds compared to phase 1 to reflect local needs. Neighbouring dwellings to 3 sides have been a constraint on the development. Following long discussions, a proposed layout is considered not to harm the amenity of neighbouring residents and would secure a high standard of amenity for future occupiers, while also representing good and attractive design. Of note, the public open space would host a path which connects the site to the north onto Swallow Lane, and this area here would be the public open space. These are sample elevations with the proposal having 5 different house types, which is a good mixture for the development of this scale. As noted, the proposed house types either match or are the same as those in phase 1. All units exceed the National Described Space Standard minimums in terms of floor space. Returning to the amenity of neighbouring residents, this section shows the relationship between the new and existing dwellings to the east and west. Land levels are varied through the site, particularly to the east and west. However, officers are satisfied that all separation distances are acceptable and would not harm the living standards of neighbouring occupiers. The report before members outlines officers' full assessment of the proposal. In brief, the site is primarily within a housing allocation, with a proposal which the proposal would make an effective and efficient use of. Therefore, the principle of residential development here is acceptable. In terms of local impacts, the proposed design is attractive and would fit into the established character of the area, effectively being an appropriate continuation of phase 1. Careful consideration has been given to the amenity of neighbour residents, which would be preserved by the proposal, and future residents would also have a high standard of amenity. In terms of highways, given the small scale of the proposal, both alone and cumulative with phase 1, traffic generation would be limited and would not harm the local network. The internal layout raises no concerns from a highways perspective, with highways officers available should any questions be raised. Other material planning considerations are outlined in the report, including ecology and drainage. These have all been assessed and concluded to be acceptable. In terms of planning obligations under Section 106, a fully policy-compliant package has been agreed, consisting of 4 affordable dwellings, approximately 500 square metres of on-site public open space, and a contribution of £36,645 to off-site improvements in the area. £37,233 towards schools, and finally £7,245 to improve local ecology. 17 public objections have been received from local residents, which are considered and addressed within the report. In conclusion, subject to the conditions and the Section 106 recommended within the report, officers recommend that the application be approved, with nothing further to add, Chair.
thank you. We'll want to speak.
We've got Jonathan Ainley.
Good afternoon. I'm Jonathan Ainley from Savills, speaking on behalf of the applicant Jones Homes. As you've heard, the site benefits in the main from a housing allocation in the adopted local plan. It's 4 years since I spoke at this committee in support of the adjacent development by Jones, which has subsequently been fully built. After proving very popular with buyers, it's provided new homes for 19 households, of which 3 of those are affordable. Granting planning permission for 21 new homes on this site will assist the council in meeting its housing target, whilst providing a high quality scheme which further enhances the area. In addition to the much needed new homes on this part of the site, these proposals include substantial wider benefits, including the delivery of 4 further affordable homes on site, which is fully policy compliant with required 20% provision, introduction or an inclusion of open space on site in addition to a commuted sum of £36,500, an education contribution of over £37,000 towards identified need at Colne Valley High School, and a commuted sum to achieve biodiversity net gain. I'd also mention that Jones are already in detailed discussions with Kirklees Homes and Neighbourhoods regarding the acquisition of affordable homes on this site for rent. We hope members will consider these to be positive community benefits arising from our scheme. The development would also deliver significant economic benefits in terms of investment and jobs throughout the construction phase and additional council tax receipts. Jones Homes has a long-standing commitment to investing in Kirklees, having delivered homes across the district for over 20 years, along with having their regional headquarters in Cleckheaton. If consent is granted and subject to discharging planning conditions, Jones intends to make an early start on the site to deliver these benefits quickly. We've worked with officers on this application over the last 12 months, as you've heard, to reach this stage. And that's included a number of design amendments, enhanced landscaping, and an increase in the number of homes as requested, whilst increasing separation distances to existing properties. We thank officers for their efforts in this regard. Given the allocation of the site for housing in the main and the stated benefits of the scheme, we hope members will feel able to support the officer recommendation to approve the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. The first phase of this application came before us 3 or 4 years ago, and it was really nice going on the site visit today to see all those houses up, and it looked really nice. This is a local allocation, this housing allocation a local plan. The only concern that I have, and it is a very minor concern, is the footpath that leads on the access from Swallow Lane. Given the distance between that, I could imagine that it would confuse drivers to think that that's the access into the site, when in fact it's not. That's a footpath. The access is the normal access on the original site. So could I have some sort of clarity or assurance that there will be some work that would go into there to deter drivers from accessing that? Because especially on that point from Swallow Lane, it is already narrow anyway, so that's the only gripe that I've got. Other than that, I think it's really a well-developed site. The first phases, it looks really nice. It's all in keeping. The nets and the balls and the cricket, and I think all that's sorted now. I'm happy to move the officer recommendation, provided we can get some clarity on the access that is on the side from Swallow Lane. Thank you.
Councillor Bellamy, then, did you want to speak, Councillor Sokol, after that? Did you indicate that you wish to speak as well? Right. Well, after Councillor Bellamy, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have got some concerns with this, more to do with the construction traffic and any arrangements that have been made. Swallow Lane is an extremely busy road, and all the roads that lead to it, however you look at it, and however they come down, even smaller, narrower, busy roads. There'll be construction traffic, no doubt, coming up from Scape, from New Way Road, down Bolster Moor, all that. We've already got a major problem with large vehicles getting stuck. I mean, the other day it were 8 hours, complete road blocked off due to a large wagon. So is there any details on what the construction traffic arrangements will be to guarantee that we're not going to end up being absolutely blocked off and down, you know, down to Swallow Lane. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Sokol.
Thank you, Chair. I apologize. I've not been on the site because I know the location very well, because I think some time ago we been on the site with the part of the development. Yeah. Going through this application, I'm like Councillor Sheikh Allah, what I've said. The main thing I support this application is the mixture of houses, unit. 3 bedroom, 4 bedroom, 5 bedroom, that's good. I know there is no mention of 2 bedroom, which is might be more attractive for some single people or small people. But yeah, the trend has changed now. Since the COVID-19 or other issues, the families want to live together. So the family want a bigger house and not a small house like 2 bedroom. I think here it's a good mixture, 4 3 bedroom, and all these 4 are affordable. I'm quite happy with that, and I think there are good car park spaces provided as well. So there is also. Section 106 contribution. I know it's not very high, but still, because it's only 22 units, I think I'm quite happy with that. So, looking into there, I don't see any reason not to approve officer recommendation. Thank you.
Are you seconding the?
Yeah, I second.
You are seconding that. Right. I don't know if the highways officer wishes to speak about the path, but I mean the path, I think he made it clear to us that it would be only a footpath, but if he wants to add to that.
Through you, Chair, Rankin, Highway Development Management. Just to come back on the couple of points raised regarding the footpath and also the construction traffic. We can include a scheme of works to deter vehicles from using that footpath as part of the proposals. That's not a problem. With regards to construction traffic, if you refer to the report, condition 10 includes a construction management plan, and that'll include routing to and from the site, and that's to be agreed with officers prior to construction starting on site. So that will be covered in that respect as well. Thank you, Chair.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please show. Oh, are you going to? You've got to take it.
That's fine. So we'll go around for the vote, and I think the microphone will be turned on for you, so you don't have to touch your microphone. So this is to vote on officer's recommendation as outlined in the submitted report. So Councillor Bellamy.
Abstain.
Councillor McGuinn.
Abstain.
Councillor Lee Richards.
For.
Councillor Lawson.
Abstain.
Councillor Oller.
For.
Councillor Sarwar.
For.
Councillor Homewood.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Corshit.
For.
Councillor Lyons. For. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for, 3 abstentions. So the officer recommendation has been approved.
Right, we move on then to page 43, which is 8 to 10 Moorbottom Road, Thornton Lodge.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. My name is William Simcock and I am the case officer for this application. 8 to 10 Moorbottom Road is a 2-storey through terrace house.
situated in an area of terraced housing. Some of the neighbouring properties are, including the two immediate neighbours, are still single aspect terraced houses. This application concerns the erection of a two-storey extension projecting 3 metres, a single-storey extension projecting another 1.2 metres beyond this, the erection of front and rear dormers, and also the formation of a basement and associated works, the steps leading up to the ground floor, as we can see from the drawing. The works have already been carried out. These are the photographs of the development as completed. The background to this is that there has been a recent permission, as shown here, for a scheme that was similar in some respects, in that it also included a two-storey extension to the rear projecting 3 metres and front and rear dormers. Development was commenced here, but was not carried out fully in accordance with the approved plans. The two-storey rear extension has a higher eaves height than originally approved, although still below the eaves height of the main building. The front dormer is a little larger, and the rear dormer has been reduced in width but is of greater depth. And as for the single-storey element plus basement, that element is a wholly new addition and therefore unauthorised. I will return again to the photographs of the site. The House Extensions Alterations Supplementary Planning Document recognises part two-storey, part single-storey extensions as a form of development that may be appropriate in principle. It also recommends 3 metres as a suitable overall maximum projection for terraced houses. However, larger extensions or other extensions that do not fully conform to the recommendations in the SPD can be allowed in situations where they can be justified. For the reasons set out in detail in the report, it is officers' view that the extension can be justified since in the context in which it is set, in the context of rising land to the west, or that is in the rear of the left-hand photograph, and in the context of the to the east, the neighbouring property having another two-storey extension that is of the same overall projection, it would not appear overly dominant and would not amount to overdevelopment of the plot or have an overbearing impact on neighbouring properties. And the rear dormer is in its present form, and its using present finished materials, white UPVC, is not considered to be acceptable, and it should therefore be a condition of permission being granted that the facing material must be replaced with a more suitable material to be first agreed in writing within an agreed timescale. And it also, I would ask members to note that the dormer in itself would not be permitted development, although there is an extant permission for a scheme which included a rear dormer, and it is considered that this which still could be implemented is not aesthetically better. And a number of objections have been received, which have been responded to in detail in the officer's report. And so it is officer's recommendation that permission can be granted for the scheme, subject to conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Speakers, we have a Ranjit Kaur. Sorry, Randip. Yeah, Randip Singh.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Randeep and my mum is the owner of number 6, an adjoining property. In the email circulated Tuesday, we pointed out that there are still discrepancies between plans and what has been built. If these plans are approved, it will allow the applicants to further enlarge their rear extension. This can be seen in the handout called protrusion. The left image shows the ground floor of the extension, and the middle image shows the first floor of the extension. The first floor is proposed to be wider than the ground floor. The rightmost image shows, when placed on top, the first floor will protrude beyond the ground floor into the shared passageway, projecting beyond its sides. The next handout, figure 4, shows this in relation to the actual properties. Number 6 is on the left, number 8 on the right, and the red square between them is where this proposal would extend to. Our concern is that this will allow the applicants to make their already enlarged extension even larger. Additionally, this is a breach of the house extension's SPD, as are other aspects of the application, such as breaching the boundary to the west, the length of projection, and the size of roof development. Whilst I would like the plans to be accurate before a decision is made, I don't believe having accurate plans will make it acceptable. At the end of the day, the extensions, built without permission, are having a devastating impact on my mum's enjoyment of her house and garden. The development obliterates sunshine from her garden in the afternoon, and that is her only outside space. I imagine the officer's decision is a difficult one, especially with the history of incorrect applications and the volume of inaccuracies within the plans. However, I believe, and hope that you do too, had this application been submitted prior to the unauthorised building works, it would have been rejected, and the applicants told to modify it to meet the SPD. As the SPD states at section 5.9, comply or justify. There is no real justification for the number of breaches in this application. The SPD requirements are clear, concise and attainable if you adhere to them before building. The fact that the extensions have already been built makes things difficult for all parties, but this development is unauthorised and is having an impact on my mum's living space. In section 10.11, the officer's report acknowledges it is a finely balanced case, and I hope that just because the extensions have already been built does not tip this balance in favour of the developer. I hope you agree that the proposed development is contrary to the council's design guidance. I hope you understand the impact this scheme is having on my mum's quality of life, and I hope you decide to reject this scheme. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's Ranjit now, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I live at number 6 with my mum, who is the homeowner. My mum is elderly, with the beginnings of mobility issues. I have had multiple sclerosis for 21 years. I rely heavily upon mobility aids, and my dependence upon these will only increase. Due to these circumstances, we spend about 99% of our life at home. Our garden is our place to get out of the house, get some sunshine and fresh air. It's the only amenity space that we can access independently. Mum's not wealthy, she values the little that she does have and wants others to have nice things too, like a new extension, hence neither of us objected to any previous applications. However, what has been built next door without permission is far removed from that, causing detriment to our quality of life and enjoyment of our home and garden. My mum's bedroom is in the attic, so she's at the top of the house, where she can get lots of natural light through the skylight. This has been blocked by the huge, high dormer. Not only does it block light into her room, she can even see it when she's lying in bed. This previous summer, she genuinely had to switch on the lights during the day, but previously she did not. When we leave the house, we are now only 1 metre away from a big, blank, overbearing 6.5 metre wall. Previously, there was the number 8 entrance door facing us, and it felt like we were in a community. Now it feels like we're barricaded in next to a wall. My wheelchair access has been obstructed, and no one thinks it's important, but it's critical and necessary for me in order to retain some form of independence. I understand that disability access is a material planning consideration. When in the garden, our visual amenity is impacted by the large, overdeveloped and overpowering rear extension. It's imposing, dominant and stands out. It feels oppressive and inescapable. Quite simply, it's big, ugly and has to be seen to be believed. The introduction of the raised platform stairs makes being in our garden unnerving. You never know when someone's going to exit the kitchen door and be stood at an oppressive height above you, looking down on you. The presence is overbearing and intrusive. We cannot relax in our garden anymore. The case officer's comparison of number 6 to number 8 extension for overshadowing and overbearing is unfair. Ours is shorter, narrower, and all of it, including its roof, is below the eaves. The southeastern aspect of our garden means that the only available sunlight appears mid-afternoon and into the evening. The taller dormer and wider extension casts a larger shadow,
30 seconds.
meaning that in the afternoon and evening, we now no longer have sunshine in our garden. It was previously a sun trap. It's the only amenity space that we have to sit outside. My mum just wants to enjoy her home and her garden with the family she loves. This development has robbed her of this simplest pleasure. Please, can you help us protect our amenity? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
And I think we've got Mr. Abrar, who I believe is the agent.
Hello there, this is Mr. Abra from Pad Architecture. I'm dealing with this application for Mr. Saja. You know, the plans, if there's an inconsistency in the plans, we can put them together. You know, we can go back to the drawing board and have a look and all amend them. You know, with regards to comments made by these neighbours, you know, obviously the application was a retrospective application. It's been designed how it's been built, you know, so basically the case officer's recommended approval. It's not an overbearing or overscale project, you know, and it's in keeping with the surroundings. He's recommended approval, so I don't really see the reason why it's not getting approved.
You finished?
Yes.
Thank you. Members? Nobody wishes to speak?
Yep, it's really a question of clarification. The point, I know we discussed this at the site visit, but I'd just like to highlight it again, ask the question, that the point of the overhang that's shown in the actual plans that's been referred to by the speaker. Can we clarify exactly what the position is with that, and whether there's any danger that that would be the case if this was passed today, that could be acted on by the occupants?
Yes, thank you, Chair. In response to those concerns raised both by Mr. Randeep Singh and Councillor Davies, it is the discrepancy that has been highlighted on the handouts in red. It is purely a drafting error. It's that is showing the first floor plan 300mm wide and the ground floor plan. It's a drafting error. It is clear from the elevations that there is no intention on the applicant's part to build out even further and create an overhanging extension. I don't think that would really serve any purpose from the applicant's point of view, having to demolish much of what they've already done and just to gain a very small strip of extra space. However, for the avoidance of doubt, and we do sometimes do this where there is a discrepancy between a floor plan and elevation, an extra condition could be imposed to the effect that the upper floor of the extension cannot exceed, say, 5.27 metres, or cannot exceed the width of the ground floor part. So that would resolve any possible concerns about that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Bellamy.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. As we know, this is, well, it was retrospective. And we still seem to be hearing that the plans still haven't been followed when they eventually came in, and it is bigger than what it was supposed to be. It's obviously having a great impact on the neighbours. We can hear that. I'm not really sure, to be honest. I would like to know, have enforcement been out at all, and has any enforcement been taken up? Because to be honest. I'm just, the way I am at the moment, I'm really, really tempted to refuse this, and I would say take it down and put in a whole new planning application and start again and get something that is correct. So if there's any more information on enforcement, I'd like to know that. Thank you.
Councillor Homewood.
Yeah, can I just clarify on the rear dormer? So, the rear dormer, the size and scale of that, has that been built to the existing planning permission? Or are we saying that it doesn't have planning permission but it's under permitted development? I'm not entirely sure, because it sounded to me that one of the obviously key objections there was that it's the dormer that's causing shading into the room, the attic room. Is that a consideration as part of your, as part of your considerations?
Yes, William.
Once again, thank you, Chair. Yes, to come back on that point, the dormer, I said in my report that it would not be permitted development, or certainly not in conjunction with the other extensions, because the General Permitted Development Order places limits on the cumulative volume of roof extensions, roof additions. There is the permission for the earlier scheme of extensions included a rear dormer, which was, I said in a report, it would have been somewhat wider in the context of the roof, but also shallower in the sense of not quite as high. The overall volume, I haven't done an exact comparison of volume, it probably wouldn't be very different, it might be slightly greater. And in terms of impact of the dormer, in terms of shading, it's something that we as planners would not normally place a large amount of weight on. The amount of if a dormer potentially overshadowing a property to the side, and how much significance members would like to place on that is of course a matter for their own judgment.
Right, thank you, William. Right, members. Councillor Waller.
Thank you, Chair. Just for clarity, William, the distances and the numbers that have been projected on these plans is purely an error. It's an error of the calculations, not an actual discrepancy of the overall scheme. That's the first thing to clarify. Secondly, can I have a bit more clarification on, you said conditions with more suitable materials. What would those conditions with more suitable materials be?
Well, through you, Chair, the facing materials that are being used for the front dormer are considered acceptable. It is some kind of horizontal synthetic boarding in a sort of dark grey colour, which blends in quite well with the local blue-grey slate. It seems to be used a lot these days on dormer extensions, and so something like that would be acceptable. But again, to clarify on the measurement issue, yes, it is purely a mistake. It is purely a drafting error. It's unfortunate that it wasn't highlighted or picked up earlier than it was. I suppose as this is it was certainly the second time it had been amended for that on that particular issue. I suppose we just assumed that it was right. But again, if necessary, a condition can be imposed just to clear up any possible remaining doubt. And if I may also just come back on the Councillor Bellamy's question about enforcement. And enforcement have been involved in response to the initial complaint about unauthorised development, and whether further enforcement action would be taken. Well, if in the event of this application were refused, then yes, it would be vulnerable to enforcement action, and again, members could vote on that. Thank you, Chair.
Right, come on, members. Now we've had this. This is the third time. It's 3 strikes and out. I want to, Councillor Sawa.
Thank you, Chair. This application has been deferred twice. Once we deferred it, secondly for a site visit. I know the area very well. Past 22 years been delivering leaflets in that area, and also I lived very near to that area. I couldn't go to site visit because I've been before, you know, while delivering leaflet. I had a look. I've got sympathy with the objectors, but we got professional officers as well. And I think they're giving it a good think about recommending it approval. So I would like to go officer approval.
So you're actually moving officer's recommendation?
Yes.
Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move refusal. There you go.
Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. Notwithstanding Councillor Bellamy's comment then, I think we ought to be careful when we're dealing with these types of issues that we're not drifting into punitive measures, because that's not what planning regulations are for. They're for regulation, they're exactly that. So what we want to do is to take control of this situation. And I think probably the best way of doing that at the moment is to second the move to accept officer's recommendation and remove permitted development rights from that point, so that anything else that happens at that site has to come back to committee, or certainly back through officers. Thank you.
I was going, but you wish to speak.
Well, I just wanted to say that I think my kind of thoughts on it were, just to be clear, was that to me, like if you was designing what the extension properly in advance, I don't think that's what you would have designed, and I think there would have been ways to make it better for everybody, and to make it look better. I think, you know, I personally don't think it looks brilliant the way that it's been built, but then having read the report, I think on balance, I don't think there's enough issues there to refuse it. So, but it's really one of these difficult ones as a committee, because we're looking at something retrospectively, which if it had been done properly in advance, you know, there could have, I think, been some more minor changes that would have made it a lot better. But I think as a committee, we're in the position that we're in, and we've got to look at it how it is. And I agree with others that we've been given the guidance from officers, and I don't think there's enough evidence to go against that.
Thank you, Councillor Uller.
Yeah, just very quickly, I think James has actually hit the nail on the head. That if it was done correctly, we probably wouldn't be here having this conversation. But on balance, reading the officers' comments and their responses, they have robustly tackled some of those concerns that have been brought forward by objectors. And I'm, with a very heavy heart, with a very heavy heart, having to support the officer's recommendation for approval on the basis of what Councillor Lawson said, but I didn't quite catch what he said at the end about the future development and everything, but he said something which I thought was really interesting. But I'm in favour, on balance, purely on what we've got in front of us and where we are, and at this late stage, that, you know, I'm minded to support the officer's recommendation.
I'll put it to the vote then. All those...
Okay, but just before we go, if I could get officers, because I think we had was it removal of permitted development rights, and then there was a thing about the additional condition, or whether that is one and the same thing, I don't know.
Go ahead. I mean, we want to get full clarification here. We don't want to go off half-cocked.
Removal of permitted development rights and a condition expressing that the first floor won't exceed 5.27 metres.
So, members, that's what you want in terms of the vote then? That's fine. So we'll go for the vote on that basis. So it's as per the officer recommendation, including those two additional points that will be included. So on that basis, if I could start please with Councillor Bellamy.
Against.
Councillor McGuinn.
Against.
Councillor Lee Richards.
Abstain.
Councillor Lawson.
For.
Councillor Oller.
For.
Councillor Sawa.
For.
Councillor Homewood.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Korshik. For. Councillor Lyons. Okay. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for, 2 against, 2 abstentions, so that application has been approved.
Right, we move on then to page 61, which is 1A Dingley Road, Edgerton.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. Ellie Worth, Case Officer for this application. The proposal seeks planning permission for the partial demolition and rebuild of number 1A Dingley Road and the extension and alteration to convert the existing outbuilding into annex accommodation. The application has been brought to Huddersfield Subcommittee at the request of Councillor Burke, who raises concerns with regards to parking, the annex accommodation and residential amenity issues. The application was previously put before members of this committee in December, whereby a vote was taken to defer the application due to a legal dispute on the site. However, for the purposes of the application at this time, the red line boundary still remains the same and the correct legal certificates have been served. Here is the location plan for the site. Here are the existing elevations and floor plans for the dwelling. As you can see, it's a single-storey bungalow. Here are the proposed plans for the site. As you can see, the dwelling would now be 2-storey and would be constructed from stone to match the surrounding area. The dwelling is to provide 4 bedrooms. Here is the slide to show the existing coach house. The extent in which is owned by the applicant is this element here, so the first dormer. Here are the proposed plans whereby the outbuilding will be extended by 0.9 metres at 2-storey and an additional 4.5 metres at single-storey. Here are some photos from within the site. This top photo is taken from Dingley Road. As you can see, the existing dwelling is down at the bottom and the relevant part of the coach house is here. This bottom photo is just a better image of the dwelling itself. As you can see, it's in a very tired state. Here is a photograph to show where the parking will be. I would like to note that the new dwelling would be slightly smaller in width and therefore will accommodate a bit more space than what is shown for parking at the moment. This bottom photo is taken, so this is where the single-storey extension will be, and there will also be space in front for vehicles to turn so they can enter the highway in forward gear. Here is a clearer photo of the outbuilding, so this element is the section in which is owned by the applicant. This photo is taken from stood in front of the outbuilding. As you can see, would have a direct relationship with a neighbouring hedge. Lastly, this slide shows, and apologies that if it's not very clear, the existing site plan and the proposed site plan. The proposed site plan demonstrates 3 on-site parking spaces, swept paths and an additional visitor space. With regards to visual amenity, officers believe that the works, especially to the host property, would result in a visual enhancement to the site and especially the conservation area in which it is situated within. In terms of residential amenity, officers are satisfied that there would be no material impact on neighbouring residents. the new dwelling itself would be set back within the plot and would be at an oblique angle with neighbouring properties. A full assessment upon residential amenity can be found within the committee report. Highways officers are also in support of the scheme, as swept paths and adequate turning space has been provided. A 4-bedroom plus dwelling in line with the recommended parking standards would require 3 on-site parking spaces. In this case, the proposal shows this. 6 representations have been received by a planning consultancy on behalf of a neighbour. The full comments can be seen within the committee report along with officers' correspondence. As such, given the reasons highlighted to members and the fact that the site has had a number of previous approvals for similar development, officers are recommending approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Yes, we have 2 speakers.
Yes, we do. Got Alison Dunville.
Good afternoon. I'm speaking today on behalf of the neighbouring resident who lives at 1B Dingley Road. Firstly, they're concerned that the annex would not be used as ancillary accommodation to the main house, but would instead be used as separate independent dwelling house. The annex's design and layout, the separate access, and the lack of information within the application regarding who will occupy the annex and why it's needed in the first place leaves a huge question mark over whether it will be used as an annex or whether in fact it will be used as an independent dwelling. We strongly believe this issue should be clarified before the determination of the application and not simply conditioned. Secondly, our client has concerns in relation to their residential amenity. The separation distances between the habitable room windows on the front elevation of the annex and the habitable room windows on the side elevation of our client's property fall considerably short of the minimum separation distances advised within the House Builder's Design Guide. This is confirmed by officers in the report. The fact that our client has a hedge on their land between their property and the annex should not override the distance requirements set out in the SPD. Our client would ideally like to trim the hedge to allow more natural light to enter the rooms on their side elevation, particularly the bedroom, but in so doing they would suffer a huge degree of overlooking and a loss to their privacy if the annex is approved. Finally, there's the issue of parking. You will have noticed from the site visit this morning that the site really is quite tight for all of the development proposed, particularly when parking provision is taken into account. 3 spaces are proposed at the rear of the site. 2 of these spaces would effectively be blocked in by the space in front. The spaces only really work if cars enter and leave the site in a particular order each time, which in practice is highly unlikely to happen. It's feared that in reality cars will either park in a haphazard way within the site, potentially causing an obstruction for other residents who share the access, or cars will park on Dingley Road, which would restrict visibility. Given the lack of turning space within the site, cars are also likely to reverse out onto Dingley Road, which again is a highway safety hazard. We simply do not believe the car parking spaces proposed will be able to operate or function properly within the confines of the application site. This was confirmed to us by an independent highways engineer. Perhaps highways officers can explain how it would work. A similar development was approved in 2016. However,
30 seconds.
That permission has now expired, and since then the local plan and SPDs have been adopted. This application should be considered as a fresh application and not simply approved given the previous history. This is especially important given there are unanswered questions concerning the annex and highway elements of the proposals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sheila's going to read out a statement on behalf of Councillor Burke.
I would like to object to this planning application on several grounds. Number 1, firstly, the proposed annex would be a fully self-contained unit designed for independent living, as it includes an open-plan lounge, kitchen, WC, bedroom and ensuite. I am concerned that it will be used as primary living accommodation rather than ancillary residential accommodation. Number 2, secondly, I am concerned by residential amenity issues caused by overlooking from the development. The windows on the front elevation of the proposed annex would look directly towards windows on the side elevation of neighbouring properties. Thirdly, I am concerned that there is insufficient on-site parking provision. The planning application proposes 4 car parking spaces, including 2 spaces in front of the annex. However, I believe that the development should include 5 parking spaces at a minimum, 3 parking spaces for the new dwelling, 1 space for the annex, and also a visitor parking space. As the annex can facilitate independent occupation, I believe that a proposal for 5 parking spaces would better comply with the Kirklees Highways Design Guide recommendation for residential development. I am concerned that the proposal for 4 parking spaces would not be able to operate within the confines of the site, and this could lead to overspill of on-site parking on Dingley Road, and this may have a negative impact on highway safety. Furthermore, the spaces located at the front of the application site are effectively blocked in by the spaces in front, so vehicles would need to enter and leave the site in a particular order each time. I do not believe that the parking layout proposed would work on a practical basis. Finally, I am concerned that the proposed development would result in the overdevelopment of the site. I do not believe that there is sufficient space on site to accommodate all of the proposals comfortably without the site feeling cramped.
Thank you. Members. Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. It's a bit of a question, to be honest, on condition 4, which says the residential annex accommodation approved as part of this permission shall be used by the occupants or relative and shall not be sold or rented separately. How can that be actually enforced? I'd like to know, because it's all right, they could rent it out to, I don't know, Joe Bloggs, and they could turn around and say, yeah, I am the nephew, or something of that nature. And so I'd just like to know how that could be enforced. Thank you.
Would you respond, please, Ellie? If you can't, our legal officer might.
Thank you, Chair. We've put a condition on, so any occupation which isn't appropriate would be a breach of condition, and they could be prosecuted for that. However, we could also impose a Section 106 agreement obligation requiring them to only allow occupation of a certain character.
Councillor Homewood.
Yeah, Chair. Obviously, we was on the site visit earlier today. I think you agree that it's quite a tight site, but I think I also agree with the officers that actually it's probably in need of development and it could improve the amenity of the area actually to have a change to what's there currently. I agree. So I think it sounds like we have the right condition to support against the issues with the annex being used for being sold or rented in a way that shouldn't be. I think in terms of the parking, I think to me that doesn't seem like a major issue. I think that a lot of people have a situation where, they have those sorts of parking spaces. I know I do, and it is a bit annoying, but you just have to make it work. So, if they weren't going to park there, then they'd be blocking the road and they wouldn't be able to get out anyway. So I'm not quite sure, to me, that causes a major problem. And I think there's 4 spaces there, which seems enough for that size of property. So. Overall, I'd be happy to move the officer recommendation for approval.
Right, Councillor Uller, then Councillor Davies, and then Councillor Sock.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it is a little bit tricky, with these leaseholders and freeholders and who owns what and who owns this and who owns that. But the state that it was in today, what I witnessed on the site visit, it is in major need of some sort of regeneration, whatever that is. The bungalow is falling down. I think one of the windows are broken. And yeah, in terms of the parking, I think, yeah, it is tight and it is what it is, isn't it, with the parking. And as James has said, I think, my road's got that and, I've got a driveway as well. So I'm happy to second James's. I think James has moved it. I'm happy to second that and move for officer recommendation.
Councillor Lawson.
Thank you, Chair. Just noting Councillor Burke's concerns, I think we've squared away the one about the habitation of that annex. I'm happy that if we have the 106 agreement, that will take care of that. I wasn't on the site visit today, so other members are probably better placed than me. to comment on that. I do note as well, though, that he was concerned about the distances between habitable windows. If officers could just talk us through that and about why we think that's acceptable in this case, or if there is any way of mitigating that. I'm not sure we could impose blank windows in there or anything like that. So if officers could just talk us through that. Thank you. Through you, Chair. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Davies.
Yeah, very similar comments to Councillor Homewood. I was on the site this morning. Yes, I think we'd all agree it's quite a tight site, but the current state of the site is obviously, to say the least, not attractive, and clearly a redevelopment would be of huge value there. I think the thing we should remember as well is, if there were 2 or 3 properties having to share parking, then I would absolutely have concerns about tandem parking. But this is not. This is one property, and therefore it's quite reasonable to expect that in one property the individuals would be able to organise between themselves, moving cars in the right proper fashion. So I really don't think that would be a problem going forward. So certainly, from my perspective, I'm in support. It would be good to hear from the officers, as Councillor Lawson said, about the distance and the overlooking. We did witness that, and it's fair to say with the current screening, that certainly isn't an issue. I think I seem to recall there was some conversation around that as well. So a bit more detail around that would be useful. But certainly on the basis of what I've seen, I'd be supportive of this.
Right, I'll have Councillor Sokol then, please, then the office.
Thank you, Chair. My main concern is about the layout, the car parking inside the property. Yeah, I read the report. I know I haven't been on site visit, but I don't live far away from this property, but I know the area well because I'm just going for a walk every day around there. My concern is, if we do not sort of this parking layout properly, I think the people will tend to park on either of Dingley Road corner, or they will park on the Thornhill Road, because the Thornhill Road is always busy parking there. People park their car to go to hospital, they who are working there, or people catch a bus to town. Yeah. So if officer look into the car parking better, to improve the car parking situation, and or they put some condition on there, there should not be any car park on the Dingley Road and with junction of Thornhill Road. So I go along with my members. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sokol. I just wonder now if that assortment of what has been expressed could be responded to, please, in the best way possible. And can I say that I thought the officer was rather kind when she said it was tired. To me, it was dead on its feet.
Thank you, Chair. As set out in 10.28 of the committee report, we acknowledge that the annex would have a shortfall from the recommended separation distances. However, as part of paragraph 7.2 of the SPD, it states that there can be several design solutions to mitigate against this, and therefore members consider the hedge that is there between the neighbours and the annex to mitigate that. The hedge is also, as we know, within the neighbours' ownership, so therefore if they were to reduce it or take it away, that would be at their choice rather than the applicant's. So having said that, we feel that whilst there is a reduced separation distance, it is mitigated significantly by the hedge. Thank you, Chair.
Right, if we're all reasonably satisfied, I'll put this to the... Oh, sorry.
Sorry, just to come back to the distances there, and I thank you, officers, for spreading some light on that. I think the matter of design and designing out some of the overlooking and some of those distance issues probably needs to happen in this room today, rather than relying on something in the future, because the principle of the screening is there, but can be removed in future by the neighbour, possibly to the detriment of the inhabitant of that annex. So there's an issue here for me for the longevity of this situation, the future situation could be deteriorate actually from what it is right now. So are there any design solutions that we could impose now as a condition that would take care of that issue?
Well, yes, Councillor Lawson, thank you for that. I'm looking at the planner and she's nodding her head in the affirmative. So I think if she'd like to respond, then perhaps when we have the vote that can be incorporated.
Yes, thank you, Chair. In terms of protecting the amenity of the future occupiers, we could attach a condition to the decision notice to recommend that the window to the dormer for the bedroom is obscurely glazed if you considered that to be a concern for the future occupiers, as it's an ancillary building to the main house and isn't a primary kind of an independent dwelling in itself. Thank you, Chair.
If that's the complete proposition, then I'd like to put it to the vote. So I'll leave it with Richard now.
Yeah, are we... Deborah, are you wanting to...
Sorry, Chair, is that the extra condition, really, the obscure glazing? Was that proposed and agreed?
It's incorporated with...
And conditions... Go on.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, just coming back on the in terms of the future occupation of the site and to ensure that it does remain as an annex. As you will have noted, the actual description of the application itself refers specifically to annex accommodation. So if it was to be used for anything like as an independent dwelling, that would need planning permission to change that use there. And then that in conjunction with then the suggested condition at number 4, as officers will recommend, that would be sufficient to ensure that the future use was retained as an annex, and it would require a separate planning permission to be used as an independent dwelling. Thank you, Chair.
I'll put this to the vote then, and Richard.
Okay, so we're happy with that now to go forward? Yeah, okay. So if we can start then with Councillor Bellamy.
Yeah, with them conditions 4.
Councillor McGuinn.
4.
Councillor Lee Richards.
4.
Councillor Lawson.
4.
Councillor Oller.
4.
Councillor Sarwar.
4.
Councillor Homewood.
4.
Councillor Davis.
4.
Councillor Sokol.
Yeah, 4 with the condition, yeah, thank you.
Okay. If I missed... No, I just... Is Councillor Corship... She's left?
No feeling well, she's just gone.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Councillor Lyons?
Yes.
4. Okay, so officer recommendation is approved.
Yeah. 79, which is 84 Dalton Green Lane, Dalton.
Right, we're just going to have a short break, 5-minute break.
Councillor I'll let everybody get seated and then we'll make a restart. Right, page 79, and this is the 84 Dalton Green Lane, Dalton.
Thank you, Chair. My name is John Holmes and I'm presenting this application which members have been asked to consider. The application is for one detached dwelling with the creation of new access from Albany Road, which you can see is at the bottom of the site. I don't know if the cursor's moving anywhere near it, but it's just down here. And it would see the division of the existing garden space of 9 Albany Road and also 84 Dalton Green Lane, with the associated areas of garden, vehicle parking and bin storage created in the land adjacent to 84 Dalton Green Lane. The site is within a predominantly residential area with dwellings of a mix of age and design surrounding the site, as well as Oxfield Court Day Centre, which is a nursing home located to the east of the site. The application is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Khan as set out in the published committee report. This slide shows the existing site and it shows a bit more clearly where Albany Road runs to the south. This slide shows the proposal being considered. It shows the access to the site would be from Albany Road. It also shows adjacent to number 84 there would be 2 parking spaces which would be for use by the occupiers of number 84. And it also shows the subdivision of the gardens for both 84 and number 9 Albany Road. So this is the elevations and includes details of windows to be obscure glazed within the first floor of the front elevation of the proposal. And this shows the layout of the proposed dwelling. And again shows 2 windows to be obscure glazed in the first floor front elevation. First floor of the property here, and that they have windows in the front elevation. So this photograph is taken from Albany Road and shows where the site access would be. This photo is taken from within the site and facing north and shows the property beyond, which is 18 Higson Court. This photograph is from within the site, facing south towards 9 Albany Road. This photograph shows the side of number 84. The openings in the side are intended to be infilled, and number 84 would be reconfigured such that the windows would be to the front and rear of this property only. And this final photograph is taken from within the site and faces east towards the Oxford Court Day Centre. Members have a full report in front of them which sets out that 3 representations have been received, which in summary set out concerns relating to the stated address of the site, overlooking, overshadowing, impact upon views, noise from construction, impact from construction vehicles upon Dalton Green Lane, potential for damage to vehicles during construction, consider there to be insufficient distance between the proposal and neighbours, fact that cutting down trees within the site has taken place already, and concern that more trees would be removed. Council's tree officer and highways team have been consulted and have stated that they have no objection subject to conditions being included upon any grant of permission. The site falls within an outer zone of a hazardous materials site identified by the Health and Safety Executive, who confirmed that they do not object to the proposal. An initial proposal was that the site would be accessed from Dalton Green Lane. The scheme was subsequently amended to take access from Albany Road to the south of the site. And the applicant has also amended the scheme to reduce the level of hard standing surrounding the dwelling and to introduce a bedroom window to the eastern side elevation and amend the bedroom window to the northern front elevation such that it would be obscure glazed. The design of the dwelling has also been amended to reducing a two-storey protrusion to the front to a single-storey protrusion and simplifying the design of the dwelling, removing coin features to the corners of the property. As set out in the report, the development is considered to be acceptable in principle and concluded to have an acceptable visual impact, and it's recommended conditions requiring submission of details of the materials of construction is included upon any grant of permission. With regard to residential amenity, concerns have been raised about the impact of the proposal to neighbouring properties. The scheme has been amended to amend the first floor windows to the front, and conditions of any grant of permission requiring these windows to be obscure glazed and that suitable boundary treatments to screen overlooking from ground floor windows are recommended. In addition, whilst it is noted that the windows to the side of 84 would be infilled, it's recommended that any grant of permission requires submission of details regarding the layout of 84 to ensure that a suitable level of amenity and parking for the occupiers of this property is achieved. The impact of the proposal upon access and highway safety is concluded to be acceptable by the highways team, subject to conditions requiring permeable surfacing, provision of sight lines, and also a condition relating to a construction management plan to be agreed with the council. The site's in an area with no presence of bats, and to provide net gain in relation to biodiversity is recommended to be achieved through imposing a condition requiring a scheme of measures to be submitted to the council and approved. In relation to trees close to the eastern boundary, an arboricultural method statement has been submitted, which has been concluded as acceptable by the council's tree officer, and it's recommended the measures within the statement are secured as a condition. The application has been assessed against relevant local and national policies as set out in the report before members. It is concluded that the proposal will be acceptable subject to conditions, and approval is therefore recommended. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We have one speaker.
We do. Christopher Langford.
Hello, good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, Council. My name's Chris Langford. This is my mother. We have a small construction company that basically has purchased number 84 Dalton Green Lane. Going back about 18 months prior to us purchasing that, we made a phone call to the council just to get their advice in what they felt in relation to a possibility of putting two dwellings at the time in the end of the garden. Which their comments were that they would probably look at something, but two was not, was not the way forward. So what we did is we put a pre-application in to even get more lead from them in relation to what would be acceptable, for them and for us to work with. After the pre-app went in, we agreed with them what we would submit on a first application, which we did submit the first application, but then got a couple of negative comments from neighbours, and rightly so, because at that point me and my mum was very concerned over their feelings as well, because we don't just want to come on and sort of take over and upset anyone. We want to try and work with well, certainly the neighbours, as well as getting an end result that is good for everyone. So at that point, we actually sat down ourselves and decided to withdraw the application, even though when I spoke to the planning officers, they said we didn't have to, we could let it go as that and see what happens. We decided, to be fair, to withdraw it at that time and look at another scheme. And at that time, this is when we approached the neighbour at the front and asked them would they be happy to sell us part of the garden to make a totally separate entranceway and take it away from, the lane, which they did. So then we submitted a the third time application, working again with the planning officers to come up with the scheme that you see today. And we feel that we've sort of tried to do everything to get what we can make work and works for everybody, the neighbours and the planning, the planning
30
consent.
seconds.
That's all. Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor Ola.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. When I read this, I was a bit nervous about it at the start, but I think that's one of the good things of going on to the site visit, because you can really physically witness it for yourself and speak to the officers and thrash out some of the concerns that are always raised. And I think in terms of the overlooking, overshadowing, overbearing effect from 18 Hickson Court, as the wall gets lower towards the bottom end, my understanding is there's going to be additional screening put in there above 2 metres. There's also a couple of the windows that are going to get readjusted, and certainly the access from Albany Avenue, Albany Road. That also looked quite, okay for me. Part of the entrance as well coming in, my understanding is it will be blocked off as you come down that lane a little bit. So again, that's another plus point. I mean, I didn't really see the overshadowing. I do think it's a fairly decent site, a decent size. I'm happy to move the officer recommendation. Thank you.
Councillor Davies.
Yeah, again, very similar comments to Councillor Ola, really. Being on the site this morning, certainly the one issue that I was concerned about was, that view across to number 18, and, that one of the mitigations for that is certainly putting some screening in. And I think I don't know whether that's a condition or whether that's 18's wall or what, but I think that's something we need to look at just to make sure that is in place. Apart from that, really, I don't think there are any significant issues that I had with this at all. And certainly, as Councillor said, the access from Albany Road is good as well. Also, very good to see people working with our planning officers in such a constructive way, which I think is always good to know that that's been done as well. So for me, I'd certainly second that proposal.
Just before I bring in Councillor Sokol, I've got to say this has been one of the easiest decisions that I've had to make, as I've seen it. But Councillor Sokol.
Well, if we are all happy, we go ahead with. But I'm pleased to hear the applicant. He had pre-application, he had listened to the planning officer, and he accepted what the planning officer said. I don't think there are any reason we can go against the officer recommendation to approve this application. Thank you.
Did you want to come? Yes.
Trees, sorry, there are some trees shown on the plan on the opposite side of the wall, and I'm just trying to read the text next to them. Is that something about a permeable surface and that to protect the roots of the trees? Is that it? Sorry, I need my magnifying glass today.
Through you, Chair. Yes, that would be text relating to permeable surfacing. Is it paragraphs 1043 and 1044, which sets out that it allows for water to penetrate, so it won't affect the trees in terms of the amount of water that they gain at the moment in comparison to after the development's been undertaken.
I'll put it to the vote. Sorry, Councillor Bellamy, do you wish to?
I was just going to say it's nice to hear that somebody's actually worked with planning and worked with the neighbours, and sort of put the work in and really looked at it. So I'm more than happy to approve this.
Right, so it's been moved and seconded for officer recommendation as outlined in the submitted report. So, Councillor Bellamy.
4.
Councillor McGuinn.
4.
Councillor Lee Richards.
4.
Councillor Lawson.
4.
Councillor Ola. 4. Councillor Sarwar.
4.
Councillor Homewood.
4.
Councillor Davis.
4.
Councillor Sokol.
4.
Councillor Lyons.
4.
That's unanimous, and the recommendation has been approved.